Oh, I would not want to be in that car. Reminds me of a sign I saw up on a wall at a little grocery store. The building is still there. You go to Bergman, you start turning left. There's an old building being torn down. It used to be Marshall's grocery store years ago. And that's been years ago. And Doyle Marshall, I think her name was Martha. I'm not sure of her name. They ran the store. But there's a sign up on the wall I thought was kind of funny. It says, when I pass away, I want to die quietly and peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not like the 6 passengers in his automobile. Did I say that right? Not like the 6 screaming passengers in the automobile. That was it. I want to die peacefully in my sleep, not like the 6 screaming passengers in the automobile. Anyway, so dead end. And we travel at dead ends sometimes in our lives, and we don't always are aware of it. A lot of times we're not aware of it. A lot of people are totally unaware of it, that their life, their travel is a dead end. And we can also apply this to our nation. There's a scripture in the book of Deuteronomy. For they are a nation void of counsel. Now let's stop and consider for a second. What nation do you think he's talking about here? What nation? This is a people that he has had a covenant with. All through the scripture he deals with these same people based upon the same covenant. So when he says, for they are a nation, he's not talking about some other people who are never under the covenant. He's not talking about Africans, he's not talking about Chinese, he's not talking about people in Australia, the Bushmen, or whoever you may conjure up in your mind. He's talking about a Pacific people, talking about our people, Israel. For they are a nation void of counsel. Neither is there any understanding in them, again, Israel. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. That's a problem. So often we do things without considering our latter end. And God is telling Israel, don't rebel against me. But they did. He said, don't refuse my teachings, but they did. And he said, don't go down this pathway. If you go down this pathway, it's not going to be a pleasant ending. You may go off of a cliff. You may run off somewhere and have an accident. Don't go this way. It's a dead end. And he tells our people, stop and consider. I want to point out also that sometimes we sit and judge the nation and we condemn politicians. And I've seen people do that a lot over the years. They condemn what the politicians are doing for the lack of faithfulness to the nation. And yet their own lives are lacking in wisdom themselves. And you can't have a righteous nation without a righteous people. And so often we have people, even within our movement, who want to judge the sins of the nation, and yet their own lives are lacking, terribly so. So he tells us to consider. Listen to my advice, he says. I'm going to tell you something, follow closely. And we don't always listen to advice. Now, a few years ago, Mary and I and Jason and Amanda and Rachel and Scott and Andrew went to Ireland and England and Scotland. And we stayed at a place in Dublin, Ireland. And while we were there, we asked the guy who was the manager of this place, home, about some things to see in Dublin. And he said, well, yeah, go here and go there. But he said, let me tell you something. And I forget the name of the street, but you will get the idea. He said, when you get into the city, don't go north of 45th Street. Don't go north of 45th Street. He said, it used to be really a nice area. It used to be really nice. But he said, the last 10 or 15 years, it's kind of got not so nice. It's kind of dangerous. My advice is do not go north of 45th Street. Well, I was curious, so he gave me some advice, but I didn't listen to advice. And Fortunately, he did not. Fortunately, the news was not a few days later. I told those people not to go there. But anyway, Mary and I were down there, and we got to 45th Street, and I said, I want to check this out. It was middle of the day time, so we started walking north of 45th Street. And sure enough, very soon I found out why don't go north of 45th Street, because it was full of blacks, Arabs, other people that you could not describe, and evidently they belong to some type of human species, but they're indescribable. And so we saw very quickly why you don't want to go north of 45th Street. And it really is the same story in a different city, because every city has the same story. So, but we were given advice, and we didn't follow it. Fortunately, everything turned out okay, but like I said, I guess the guy could have a few days later said, I told those people not to go there. Too bad. Anyway, so, but we should listen to advice, should listen to counsel. We should do that. I mean, if we're going to repair a car, listen to someone who's a mechanic, or do some type of construction, or whatever, listen to somebody who has some counsel and knowledge and wisdom in that area. And then the same with this, God is telling us, listen, I'm going to give you some advice, and follow my advice, and don't go down this pathway. Consider what you're doing, consider your decisions, because if you don't, it's not going to be a pleasant ending. And so we see the old story about the guy who paints himself into the corner. You see pictures like that. He got all the floor painted. There he is in the corner. And he can't get out because the floor is all wet. He's painting himself in the corner. There's this image you see of a man on a tree limb. He's cutting off the limb, but he's on the limb, and when he cuts it off, then the limb falls down. He falls down with it. And so people need to consider what they're doing, stop and think about it. And they don't always do that, but it's important. We stop and consider our latter end. What is our decision going to do to us? And sometimes we feel sorry for people. It's our nature. We see somebody in a destitute situation or unhappy situation. We feel sorry for them. It's our nature. And we are reminded that God said in Psalm 36, Jason gave a message on this a few years ago, God's mercy lasts forever. His mercy extends to all generations. So we have sort of that nature in us too. We feel sorry for people who get themselves in a corner and get themselves in a trap. But at the same time, we have to understand there's consequences. People make a decision and there's consequences. I can't change those consequences. I can't change that. And if you make some wrong decisions, I can't make your decisions for you. It's up to you. And our nation has made some wrong decisions. And the world conditions are horrible. We see what's going on. Every day in the news, we see more atrocity against our people. There are some things that are interesting. There's this, to show that there's some type of resistance, maybe is a good word, among our people. It's starting to grow. We see with this deal about Bud Light. I'm not a beer drinker, but I'm glad to see people who are beer drinkers are not buying Bud Light anymore. And so they're losing a lot of money, and they've closed down several of their bottling plants because the boycott of so many people not wanting to buy Bud Light. But now the humorous part about that, I think, and I don't know if this is true, but I suspect it is, Garth Brooks has a bar he's opened up in Nashville called Friends in Low Places. You may have heard this. And he's made a big deal. I'm going to serve Bud Light and in my bar. And I don't know if this is going to happen, but I suspect that good old boys are not going to want to go there and drink Bud Light because they're boycotting Bud Light and not want to go to his bar if he's bragging about it. So I suspect that Garth Brooks is going to have a boycott from, we can say, good old boys and girls who are not going to want to go to his bar because they're boycotting Bud Light. But at the same token, I suspect you're going to see a lot of homosexuals going to say, hey, let's go to Garth's bar. So I think Garth Brooks is going to end up with a gay bar in Nashville. People are going to say, oh, let's go to Garth Brooks' gay bar, Friends in Low Places, AIDS is flowing down the aisles. I don't know. I suspect that's what's going to happen. Maybe not. But there is some resistance. I saw in the news the other day we know what's happened to school boards and how they've been taken over by leftists and whatever. But I saw one school board in California where the head of the school, I was just on the news yesterday, the president of the school board is actually a Christian conservative. And they just passed a rule in their school district to do away with all this transgender stuff, in the school. And of course, that's controversial and so on. And a member of the state representative from Sacramento came down to speak in favor of a policy of allowing children to be sexually mutilated by some doctor without parents' knowledge, because that's child-affirming care, they tell us. And so a black representative came there to speak in behalf of against this new policy the school was enacting. And so he got behind the microphone, like you see in all these other images, and he spoke for his minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And then the Christian conservative, who now runs the school board, banged her gavel and said, "Your time is expired." And he said, "Well, I'm not finished." He kept talking, and she said, "Your time has expired." And he kept talking. She said, "Will the law enforcement officers please remove him from the premises?" And they actually came and grabbed him and took him off. So that was kind of refreshing to see that. And then, of course, this song that's out there making all the charts. What is it called? They wouldn't do this in a small town. It shows there's some resistance starting to happen, more so than we have seen in years. So it's kind of refreshing. But I was talking to a guy, excuse me. I was talking to a guy that I've known for many years in Walmart, about 10 years ago. And he was a Christian conservative, and I got talking to him, and he talking about world conditions and so forth. But somehow it just, to me, he didn't seem like he really connected to what's going on. And then he said, "Yeah, but he's, well, yeah, it's getting really bad. But the Bible says the last days, things are going to get bad in the last days." And then he says, "Oh, where's the chicken?" I thought it was kind of humorous. You have to be there, but he said, like, "Oh yeah, it's going to get bad in the last days. It's going to get really bad. Where's the chicken?" Like we're supposed to just accept it. And but how often do we do things without considering our consequences? We do it all the time. And Nike has that commercial, "Just do it," and without stopping considering what we're told just do. We may just do it and all of a sudden realize, why did I do that? And maybe in our country today, people are starting to think, well, why did we do this? Why are we allowing this to happen in our country? Just do it. It sounds good, I guess, if it's a good thing, but we reap what we sow. The Bible tells us that. We have consequences. Our nation has consequences. And that's one of the first things we teach our children, I think, usually. Don't touch the hot stove. And if they do touch the hot stove, you feel bad, and you don't want to and you feel bad they got burnt, but you hope they learned their lesson. And, sometimes they do. Jason says that, being an attorney, there's people he sees in the court. He says that the judge will say, "Yeah," he said, "that kid, he's been here 3 or 4 times, he never learns. His father, well, I stood before his father when he was coming to jail." Some people never learn. I don't care. They just never learn. I don't know why it is. No matter what the consequences are, they just don't learn. And so the child does the hot stove. Well, hopefully they'll at least learn not to do that, and maybe even listen to me next time I give them some wise counsel. But the kids don't learn. And of course, then we see, don't drink and drive. How many of you see that? And people still do it. They still do it. They drink and drive, and they have accidents. And they're usually so drunk, I should say usually, quite often, they're so drunk that the body's really limp, so they don't get killed. And the innocent one is really stiffens up because he feels booming. The other ones die. And so, a few years ago, I was in town, and some of you who know where Ozark Auto Body is at in Harrison, and there's a little yard right next to their shop, their auto repair shop, and there was a car there that had just been in a wreck like 2 or 3 days earlier up towards Jasper, and the car was totally destroyed, and the driver was killed. And it was a young fellow, a teenager, high school. And while I'm talking to the guy there at the Ozark Auto Body, a car pulls up, and a young fella gets out, and I didn't talk to him, I just watched what happened. A young fella gets out in his teens, same age as the guy who got killed, because he was drunk driving accident. And I watched him walk over to the cage, leaning over the cage, where his buddy had just been killed in a car accident for drunk driving. And he sits there leaning over the cage and he's weeping. But people don't learn. And after about 3 or 4 minutes, he goes back to his car, and I'm watching. Sits in the driver's seat. Before he drives off, he tilts up a can of beer. It was, I forget what brand it was now, but it was alcohol. He drove off. And I thought, he just was sitting there, seeing a car where his friend was killed for drunk driving. And did he learn a lesson from it? He didn't. He tips that can of beer and drives off. And it's sad. So we tell kids, don't do this, we don't do that. God tells us, don't do this, don't do that. But we don't listen. Our nation doesn't listen. And kids don't know why. I told you to clean up your room. I told you if you didn't clean up your room, you're going to get in trouble. Oh, I didn't know. Well, I told you. I told you not to sass your mother. Well, I didn't really mean it. Well, too bad. There are consequences. We give other bits of advice, and we're given advice. And we have to decide whether we're going to listen or not. Now, there's a website that I got this a couple years ago, so I'm sure it's still on there, but I didn't take time to check, called Authentic Parenting. The title of this article, Authentic Parenting, is, are you damaging your child by demanding obedience? Now, you haven't thought about that, have you? Are you damaging your child by demanding obedience? So here's what I tell you. Here are 6 reasons why obedience is potentially damaging and why you may want to reconsider demanding it from your child. Demanding obedience, they say, demanding obedience damages self-worth. Oh, that precious little self-worth. You're going to damage your self-worth by making them obey. Here's what they write. When a child is made to do something with no choice or reasoning, their sense of self-worth is affected. They must override their own needs to do which the commanding person expects. So, demanding obedience could damage your child's self-worth. Also, demanding obedience instills shame. Along with overriding their own needs and damaging self-esteem, a child that has no say over their own body and choices will feel ashamed. So don't make your child obey. Demanding obedience is set up for bullying. Parents often demand that a child follow orders and then threaten them with consequences and punishment in the name of obedience. How is a child to recognize when a peer or stranger is bullying them if this already happened at home? Demanding obedience hinders critical thinking. A vital part of the learning process and development of a child is asking questions and exploring alternative outcomes. If a parent is making a child obey and phrases such as, do this right now and just stop asking questions, they are ultimately denying the development of a credible life skill, thinking. Think about that, Jason. Demanding obedience kills trust between a parent and a child. Parents can demand and then a child may do as their parents tell them, but ultimately the child will not feel good about why they did it. In addition to damaging their self-esteem, they'll also start to question their trust in you as a parent. Now, those are really silly things, and it's no wonder that we're ending up today with rotten, spoiled, disobedient, self-centered kids. It's no wonder. Now, a few years ago, in 2016, there's a magazine in Germany called Baby and Family. And it's very large, has over almost 2 million subscribers. It's a free publication, and so they make their money off of advertisers. And it's available in doctors' offices and in pharmacies and drugstores and that sort of thing. So it's free distribution. And but they had an article in September 2016 called "Danger from the Right," and it's warning the German citizens that there is this undergrowth of the far right in their midst. And they have to go, they're advising these people how to help identify a child who's in a far right or a white nationalist family. So if you're somewhere, they're telling people, you're somewhere, say, you're a mother, you got your children to the playground, and there's a woman there engaging in a conversation, talking with you, observe to find out, watch her children, and you'll find out this might be a white nationalist mother trying to trap you into white nationalism. All right, so I'm quoting, "Ordinary parents must be careful to protect their children from the extremist teachings of right-wing and racist families who often move about in our midst undetected." What are some of the ways to help identify a right-wing family? I'm not making this. This is in their paper. I'm quoting it. Here's how you can help identify a right-wing family by observing their child. Their child is often cheerful, engaging, usually very nice. Children of right-wing parents display more self-confidence. Also, their children are more obedient than normal children. The article also said that right-wing children are usually better groomed, they dress more modestly, and they often display overt signs of patriotism. So that's how I identify a right-wing child. They're obedient, and they're engaging, and they're happy. So anyway, it's really sad, but because they don't want now when you say overt patriotism, they like a certain level of patriotism, you know. Although they want to be patriotic when they're going to go to war for their global agenda, then they want those soldiers to wave the flags and so forth. So they want patriotic soldiers, but they do not want patriotic citizens. They want the citizens to be little drones, you know. So, yeah, so we had a fellow come visit here a few years ago. He was from Sweden, and he said the quickest, now it may have changed over there because a lot of things going on in Sweden now, in Europe, but this is 10, 15, 20 years ago. Right, you know what I'm talking about. Jason probably does too. And he says if you're wearing like a Swedish flag patch on a jacket or something, he said you can be suspected to be harassed by the police. He said anything that looked like nationalism, he said you'd be suspected to be harassed. So they want patriotic soldiers for their globalist agenda. They don't want patriotic citizens. So God is telling us, this opening verse, he says there's consequences for the foolish things we do, the rebellious things we do. And he says, consider. Slow it down. Consider your latter end. Consider what has happened. Consider what you're doing to yourself. Look at your nation, and you know what you have done, Jeremiah says. Look at yourself. Look at yourself. And you know what you have done. He said, oh, that they are wise, that they would consider their latter end. Because wisdom and understanding is something we don't have. As a people, we lack wisdom. We need wisdom. We need knowledge. We need understanding. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all thy strength, and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Now we read in Proverbs 6, these are the 6 things the Lord hates. 7 that are detestable to him. Prideful eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Now the church has labeled what they call the 7 deadly sins, which are lust, gluttony, greed, laziness, wrath, envy, and hate. The reason those things really cover a wide area because we have to understand that all sin begins in the heart, begins in our heads, begins thinking about it first. And when you begin thinking about it, you got plenty of time to consider. You got plenty of time to consider. People don't consider. And this is what has happened to America. America has become a broken nation because we have become a broken people. We can't sit back and look at Joe Biden stumbling up the stairway or tripping over a bale of hay or whatever he tripped over there in that. Wasn't hay, I don't guess it was. Yeah, we laugh about that, but we need sometimes stop, look at what we as a people, what have we done? What have we allowed to happen? Like I said, you don't have an unrighteous nation unless you have an unrighteous people. Or you can't have a righteous nation unless you have righteous people. It begins with the people. That's why St. Chronicles says, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face. Not at the president, not at the Congress, not at the court, not at the government. It's the people. And what people is that? It's our people, Israel. And so we've become a broken nation and a broken people because we don't consider. We don't consider our latter end. We don't consider what we're doing to ourselves. Now in Isaiah 14, we read about the satanic rebellion. Verse 14 says of Satan, "I was set above the heights of the clouds, I'll be like the Most High." And I pointed out to you before that it isn't that Satan wants to be usually we hear Satan wants to be worshipped. He don't care about worship. He wants to be the lawgiver. He wants to have claim dominion. He wants to claim dominion. He wants dominion over the earth, but he wants dominion over our lives. And as Christians, we stop because no, Satan don't have dominion over our lives. And we ourselves should not seek to have dominion over our lives. We should submit to the dominion of God. Because God is the one with ultimate dominion. Now we read in Genesis 1:28. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowls of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the waters." This was what is called the dominion mandate given to Adam. He tells Adam to have dominion, to subdue the earth. Now, in the Good News translation, which I like their rendering of this a little better, he says to Adam, "Have many children, so that your descendants will live all over the earth and bring it under their control." That wasn't just a recommendation. That was a commandment. Our people were commanded to take control of the earth. And for generations we did. When we moved into Africa, what did we do? We took control of Africa. We moved to India, we took control of India. We came to America, we could control North America. We could control every place we put our foot. We controlled it. That was a commandment. That was our dominion. When we fail that dominion, we fail that commandment, we are what? Not recognizing what the latter end will be. When we give up our dominion. The Message translation, I like also very good. In the same translation they place it, it says, "Prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, take charge." That's our people. That's a commandment we have. And when we did that commandment, we were blessed. Wherever we placed our foot, wherever we traveled, we were blessed. The world was blessed. Even the ultra-mentions, I like to call them, were blessed. They were blessed. I was raised in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit was a beautiful city, as long as we were in charge. Memphis was a beautiful city, as long as our people were in charge. Chattanooga, Atlanta. Name every city. Springfield, St. Louis, Chicago, Kansas City, Nashville, Chattanooga, Cincinnati, Baltimore, New York, name it. Every city, large city in America that is now facing distress, is only doing so because those who were in charge are no longer in charge. It happened because we didn't follow the commandment of God. We did not claim our dominion. We had this dominion mandate given to our people. And we did not look at the consequences of what would happen when we took back or we removed ourselves from being in charge. And so now we face the consequences. We abdicated our authority and we gave it away to those which we are supposed to rule over. Now, I'm going to close very quickly. This mandate, this authority was given to the sons and daughters of Israel. They're given to our people. We were given the commandment to rule, to take charge, to claim dominion. And he said, if you do those things, I'm going to bless you. And all people will be blessed because of that. But if you don't do that, if you don't follow wise counsel, if you don't have understanding, if you go down this wrong pathway, if you don't consider where you're going, if you don't consider what this is going to do to your people, you're going to face the consequences that has happened today. This authority was not given to some judge. This authority was not given to some ecclesiastical authority like the Pope or anything of that nature. It was not even given to a king or Congress or rulers or anything like that. The authority laid in the hands of the people. And it was what we call today self-government. Because in self-government, we recognize there's no authority between us and God. And this was the way I see it. Some people disagree with me, and I understand that. This was part of this blessing of this new covenant we read about in Hebrews 8. This new covenant where Christ came, He died on the cross, He paid the price of sin for our lives, then rose from the grave 3 days later. And what did He do? What did that accomplish? It conquered the rebellion. We've been facing the satanic rebellion since the beginning of time, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ conquered the rebellion. And it restored our dominion mandate. He gave it back to us. The rebellion was conquered, and liberty and salvation was restored. We call it the gospel of the kingdom. This is the good news. The good news that when we read Scripture, Christ went out and proclaimed the gospel of the kingdom, the good news of the kingdom. What was the good news? The good news is the satanic rebellion has been conquered. That's the good news. So we're going to close here with, I'm going to read 5 Bible verses. I think I have them on the screen. And before we do, I'm going to reconsider in our own hearts now what I've been saying. And we sometimes and oftentimes will sit and judge our rulers. And they deserve judgment. Don't get me wrong here. They deserve judgment for the wickedness and for their betrayal. But if we want to judge them properly, we also have to examine our lives. Are we in a position to judge? What does the Bible say about what happens if you have a wicked judge? If you have a wicked judge, is not judged righteously. That's not a good thing in any court of law if a wicked judge is ruling. And we're going to sit and judge our nation and judge these people that are betraying us. Then we have to stand from a platform of righteousness. We can't not be a wicked judge. We have to be a righteous judge. So, I'm going to read 5 Bible verses. Then we're going to submit yourselves then to God and resist the devil. He'll flee from you. Now the word resist doesn't mean just like, okay, say, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to resist you. The word resist actually means to oppose, fight against the devil. Not just sit back, but resist him, fight against him. James 4, verse 7. All right. Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to Him. We're going to be a righteous judge of the wickedness of the hour that our nation experiences, the wicked nation that we have today. And we're going to be a righteous judge, and we have to do it from a righteous standpoint ourselves. Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to Him. All right. Get wisdom, get understanding. Now those are hard things to get. There's a fellow that I know, and very, very, very smart person. Highly educated. And yet he has no wisdom. He has no wisdom. Wisdom is something people need to seek after. You need to seek after wisdom. You can't go, you don't go to a four-year university, you don't go to Harvard or Yale or Columbia University and get a degree in wisdom. They don't pass out degrees in wisdom. Wisdom is something you have to seek after with your heart. Wisdom. Get wisdom. Get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. That's the advice that we're being told. Proverbs 2:8. He guards the course of the just and protects the way of the faithful ones, his faithful ones. He guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. I want to be among those people. And the last one I'm going to read, and there's many more in Proverbs. We'll be here all day long reading Proverbs and Psalms and other places. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. As Christians, we should seek to have God order our steps each and every day. If we want to stand as a righteous judge against the sin of this nation and judge it as well it deserves judging, then we need to ensure that our steps are ordered by the Lord. Let's pray. Our Father, we ask that you will touch the heart of each and every person here. We know that each and every one of us here follow our own folly oftentimes. Each and every one of us follow our own way. We've become prideful and thinking our way is the right way. We try to outsmart God. And yet we know in our quietness, in our humility, we need to bow and understand that we want your life. We want you to order our steps and guide our ways and guide our pathways. Help us consider our letter N. Not only consider the letter N of our nation, but in our own lives. Help us consider what we're doing. Help us consider the decisions we make, the choices we make, and how it will affect our letter N. We ask your blessing upon each and every one of us here.